Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of TDX. Hope it was all fun yesterday. Hope you guys all enjoyed the little party last evening. My name is Sri Srinivasan. I'm a Senior Director of Information Security here at Salesforce, and I'm joined by my colleague, Joe, in the same group. And we are super excited to be talking about, to continue your talk on securing Agentforce implementations. A few housekeeping items. Salesforce is a publicly traded company. We will be talking about things that are not yet in the product and on the roadmap. So please make all your purchasing decisions based on what's in the product today. And I know you all have a choice, and you made the choice to be here, so thank you for doing that. So let's get started. What do we have on the agenda? For those of us who didn't know, who weren't with us back at TDX or Dreamforce, this is a series of talks. We've been doing this every year. We present what's changed, what's new. And so we'll go back to where it all started. We'll give a quick recap of what we covered at TDX. Then we'll talk about how things changed at Dreamforce. Then I'll come back, talk about what the platform provides to you, what features are coming out that helps you make your Agentforce implementations more secure. Then Joe will jump in, talk about MCP and data governance. We'll wrap it all up with some observability and deterministic execution. Hopefully, we'll have enough time to do a small demo at the end as well. All right? With that said, going back to Dreamforce, again, if you joined us at TDX last year, the next 4 or 5 minutes should be very familiar for you. If not, no worries. You can actually scan that QR code, and that'll take you directly to the talk that we did at TDX 2025. Pause for a second if you wanted to follow that along. Majority of our conversations were focused on actions, and we based it on those 5 pivot points. And that's what we're going to do today. That's what we did at Dreamforce. That's what we did at TDX. So we'll follow the same theme. So to start off with least privilege, right? By default, when you create an agent, the agent has no permissions. And that's not a bug. That's how we designed it. We wanted to be explicit. We wanted you to add those permissions to those users. And while you're adding those users, we told you to be very cautious about org by defaults and role hierarchy. Because why? They apply to the agent user just like how they apply to your Salesforce users. We've made changes. We're making changes that makes this much more easier for you. And that seems to be the theme across all of our controls that we've been talking on. One of the biggest traps that developers and agent admins fall into is action inheritance. You design an agent, the agent picks a topic, invokes an action, and that in turn pulls up an apex, executes an apex. Unfortunately, this apex is running in system context. What does that mean? Now you just have backdoor access to admin level privileges. The word system context, that's key. That's where majority of privilege escalations happen with agents. Again, the next up would be access controls, right? Agents are headless. There's no logins for agents. So it is upon you as the developers and as admins to make sure that you force that mandatory user verifications. While you're at it, make sure that you're using enhanced authentications where required, step-ups where required. If it's a sensitive transactions, using better MFA methods, follow the standard basics that you would do. Then we wanted to focus on secure design. One of the first and most important things when it comes to secure design is scope. You want to define your agent with explicit scope and boundaries. You don't want to create a general purpose agent and hope that the LLM figures out that it restricts the right things to the right person, right? You want to make sure all your permissions, all your identity aspects are all baked into the action itself, and they don't sit as instructions to the LLM. Make it explicit. Then comes input validations. Not just the input that the user types into the agent box. It's also the input that the agent accesses. What are the different external sources the agents can get it to? What are the different knowledge articles the agents can have access to? And this is important because that's where a lot of these indirect injections stem from. And finally, error handling. I mean, usually folks think error handling is just in user experience. Not necessarily. If you have too much of a verbose error logging, you're going to actually hand an attacker an attack map saying, hey, here's my schema, here's what I do. Go ahead, come hit me up. So then we spent some more time on testing, right? Agents are just softwares. You test your software before you release them. Just like that, you need to test your agents. And to help you with that, we released our testing center, Agentforce Testing Center. And what it is that it's an AI-assisted testing tool that does it at scale, and it is all automated. That's what it does. And you can interact with it in natural language and start testing your agent with multiple thousands of iterations. So in today's age, if you're actually testing your agent by going into the prompt builder and chatting with it, you're not actually testing, you're just hoping to find something. So those were some of the key insights that we touched upon at TDX. Then we evolved. We went to Dreamforce. I'm going to ask Joe to see if he can spend the next 5 minutes talking about what was great at Dreamforce.
Outstanding, thank you so much. So we're going to journey all the way back to the fall of 2025, where we did talk a lot about Agentforce security and understanding the ramifications of the actions that these agents are taking. I want to make everyone aware of the security risks for all of the different types of actions that can be driven by your agents so that you have the understanding of where that risk is coming from, what an attacker can do if they manage to exploit an agent in some way, shape, or form. The major building blocks of Agentforce actions at that time, of course, was running prompt templates, executing flows, running Apex methods, external API calls, including Heroku API calls. I'm not going to read through all the details of this. You can certainly do that, but understanding that each of these actions have certain privileges against data that may or may not be elevated depending on the architecture of it. You know that flows and Apex can run in system mode or in user mode. You're aware of when you're running these externally facing agents, they're running in an ASA user context, an Agentforce service account. So the privileges that the service account runs with may not be the same privileges that the actions are executing under if those actions are defined as running in elevated privileges. So you need to be aware you are transitioning security boundaries there and be aware of the risks that come from that, and making sure that you're doing the right things to sanitize your data, scope your actions appropriately, scope your agent topics appropriately so that you are presenting a small attack surface and having a good understanding of where things go. There's additional controls available on that platform using the built-in agent variables, action binding to give some guarantees of integrity of some variables, of being sure that variables that are being passed from action to action, topic to topic are directly sent there without having to walk through the conversation context. And then also being aware of that conversation context. Your agent is executing, it's performing these language processing, it's discerning intent, it's putting a lot of data into that conversation context, using it to drive those decisions. That's also an attack path for an attacker to come in and attempt to poison that context, convince the agent that, oh, it's okay, I've already authenticated, I did that 3 steps ago, you just weren't paying attention, or in other ways to perform prompt injections, prompt poisoning to convince the agent to take actions that it should not take at that time. And these are driven by LLMs. They are non-deterministic systems. There's no hard coding at this point in time. When you're running through topics and actions to say, always do this, never do that, you can ask it to, but that doesn't mean it's always going to follow the instructions. We talked a lot about the need for threat modeling your agents, having that understanding of where the data is coming from, what your topics and actions are, what the scope of those actions are, and where the potential weaknesses are in those attack points. In order to do that, again, you're going to describe your agent, understand all of the actions it's going to undertake, and you're going to attempt to design it to be as focused as possible, restricting the topics and making sure that they're clear, concise, and if you need to have specific tasks broken out across multiple agents, that's generally the best way to make sure that your agents are going to accomplish what they need to accomplish without being exploitable. We talked about user authentication, making sure that if you are taking privileged actions, you know who the user is, you've gone through the steps necessary to verify their identity, and you're taking actions that are within the scope of that user's access. This is particularly important when you're talking about those externally facing agents that are interacting with anonymous users, that may be interacting with your customers that have to go through some sort of verification process. The agent service account has access to all of the case records because it needs to have access to all of them. You don't want it disclosing customer B's case records to customer A in a chat, so you need to have it be very aware of the end user context that it needs to respect. And a great way to understand all of that scope is, again, I'm a security guy, so I'm barely going to harp on threat modeling. There's a lot of great content out there. On threat modeling, there is a Trailhead trail on it. And now I'll hand it over to Sri for 2026.
Yep. So that's 10 minutes on just recap. That's about 25% of our session time. We did that intentionally because those are the foundations on which we built everything on. What happened? What changed? Back in 2025, when we all gathered back here, we were talking about one agent across those 5 attributes. We spoke about them. They were having access to 1 external data sources, and then they probably did 1 private action. That was the scope that we're talking in. Today, that is child's play. We're running a couple of dozen agents, all of them chaining together. We're starting to use MCP server to reach out to other systems. We're grounding them on terabytes of data in data cloud. Your attack surface just didn't grow, it multiplied. So this year, we're going to be focusing on similar themes. We're going to talk with our security features first. That's where we're going to spend a lot of time today, and then we'll go into the rest of the ones as we get along. I'm going to kick it off with our security features. These are the things that the platform has provided to you. We're coming out with these features that help you make your Agentforce implementations more secure. But just with everything in security, it's a shared responsibility. We can put out the greatest and the best tools out there, but if it's not adopted, it doesn't really add value. So we're going to get into each one of these, and I'm going to tell exactly where we have your back and exactly where we need you to do something to make sure you reap the entire benefit. We'll start off with anomaly detections. One of the biggest problems, I say, with traditional anomaly detection, detection is that it is all based on known bad. I know this is bad, it fits this, so it's considered to be bad. But when you take an attacker using an AI agent, right, it doesn't fit that pattern anymore. All I see is that this user comes in, sends a prompt, gets a response back, alters the prompt, puts it back, gets another response back. At best, that looks like a slightly confused legitimate user to me. Think about it. Your attacker already has access to the agent. They have passed all your parameter controls there. In your system, they have access to your agent. How do you know? How do you restrict them? How do you look into what's happening within the agent? What are they doing? So as to make sure that you identify and pick out the bad apples from there. And this is where anomaly detection kicks in. What we have is models that allows us to identify actions such as data exfiltration. Someone's trying to take out bulk data. Privileged escalation. Someone's trying to do something that they're not authorized to do. Malicious code executions, Apex invocations, things that you're not supposed to do, you're doing, and misconfigurations. These are some of the things that our anomaly detection currently looks at for. Think about it. If you have an agent that in the past 90 days or 120 days is doing something benign, and then all of a sudden one day it goes in and accesses a permission set or a profile record just once, your normal rule-based engine is not going to fire this. But that's where anomaly detection kicks in. And how it works is it all starts with a daily session profiling. Everything that's coming in gets profiled. Every user, what, when, how, which agent, what org, what objects did it access, what Apex classes did it invoke, what entities did it touch. All of that information is gathered and profiled. Once we have this profile, what do? We go back and say, like, I want to create a historical baseline. We create a baseline based on the last few weeks of activities. We understand what you did. And we don't do it at a very high level. We do it at an org, we do it at an agent, we do it at a user level. So I have that granularity of what good looks like. Then we start scoring things. Anytime a new session starts, something comes up, we start comparing against this baseline to say, how does it fit? How off is it from what we have already seen for this user on this org using this agent? Great. And once we have that, we kind of give you the score. This is where I need you to lean in. We tell you what looks to be anomalous. We tell you what is bad, but you need to monitor, investigate, and act. This is where your side of the responsibility model lies. Then we want to jump into prompt injection detections. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk through all of those prompt injection detections. All of you know what prompt injections are. However, what we're introducing is ML models that basically scan every prompt for these 6 types of attacks. Pretendings, where you're basically trying to manipulate the AI to thinking you're a different persona, or you want to do privilege escalations, bypass the rules. You want to do prompt leakage, where you want to go in and try to understand the rules of engagement and play around it. Things of these nature are now automatically scored. What we do is we score each and every prompt, and in true Salesforce style, we log everything in Data Cloud, in data model objects. They're available for you. If it's in Data Cloud, what can you do? You can go grab it, play with it, export it, import it, do analysis on this. And all of this you can do without any code, right? As usual, no code. It's just clicks. Go into your Einstein Trust Layer setup and turn it on, and you have it all. Again, this is all great, but what do you have to do? Just like everything else. This one, prompt injection detection. It detects and scores it. It does not block it. The onus is on you. And then the other important thing, all of this is happening at the LLM level, not at the planner level. So one of the good things is also one of the good best practices is to make sure that you treat your system prompts like public information. Don't put secrets in there. Don't put anything sensitive in there. Those are some best practices that I would recommend. However, prompt injection detection, PID, was not a silver bullet. You need more than that. There are other things happening. Prompt injection detection goes very well with our toxicity detection. Those two go hand in hand for you to exert more control. I mentioned it happens at the LLM layer, not at the planner layer. So Sri, what are you guys doing about the planner one? That's why we have our Atlas reasoning engine. The reasoning engine actually looks at every single prompt that comes in, and it's basically doing the similar stuff. It's actually looking to see, are you trying to reverse engineer things? Are you trying to do a prompt injection detection? So at the planner level, and this one, you don't have to do anything. We already have it running, and it's always turning on. So for example, if a bad actor were to get access to your agent, which they already have, and they're starting to ask questions to understand what the system prompt is, the planner is going to be like, hey, that looks like reverse engineering. You're trying to find out what I'm going to do. I'm not going to provide you with a response. The planner stops you there. And all of this is running parallelly. So you have multi-layered defense. Next up, I'm going to talk about trusted URLs. You don't want your agent to go wherever they want, do you? I don't. So how do we prevent, or how do we restrict where my agent can go and what my agent can reach out to? We use something called as trusted URLs. This allows and prohibits an agent from saying that you can go to unapproved endpoints. You can generate unapproved endpoints. And when that happens, the response is just going to be like a redacted URL. The user doesn't get the full URL. And all this enforcement is happening at the LLM gateway before it even gets to the users. And it's super easy to configure. 2 clicks, go to trusted URLs, add them. While you add them, remember the scope is not just for your agents, it's for your entire, all your CSP directives on experience sites too. They get impacted. And while we're at this, we made a recent update in February 2026. We noticed that we were actually allow listing all Salesforce domains. That's great because it's our company, we trust it, but in line with least privilege. If your agent does not have the job that it does that requires you to go to help.salesforce.com, it shouldn't have that ability. So we went in and we yanked all of those things out. What this means for you is that going forward, you need to make sure you know exactly what your agent needs. If it needs to go to help.salesforce.com, if it needs to go to a CDN to get some information, to get a logo, all those things need to be in your trusted URLs. And finally, I want to wrap things up with secure by defaults. A lot of the changes that has been happening is we're trying to balance between security and flexibility. So we're trying to get to a happy medium. Some of the things that we're making changes are like we've introduced action confirmation for all create, update, and delete. So a human in the loop is required, and explicit approval is required so that automated exploit chains can just silently go ahead and execute things. Same thing applies for your delete. Any destructive actions now require explicit intentional approval or an action. We also set those flags for the update verified contact and customer contact. The reason being, we noticed that that's one of those fields that gets often abused. So we wanted to make sure that if your agent wants to make updates to that, you better have a human in the loop that takes a look at it and makes those updates. And all of these, we've made sure that we have turned it on, but we have given the control back to you. You can go back and say, Sri, no, I don't need it. Put me back to how I was. Your admins have that control. All we want to do is that action is deliberate. You take a couple of minutes to think about what you're doing, and then you flip this toggle off. With that, I am going to pass it over to Joe to take us with governance.
Thank you. We've all seen the productivity benefits and efficiency gains from agentic interactions, working especially with MCP servers, providing that universal serial bus interface to all sorts of things. There are 2 different MCP servers I want to talk about today that are hosted at Salesforce, the DX MCP server and then the hosted MCP server. 2 different use cases for these. The DX MCP server is for your use when you're building out Salesforce-based applications. You're working in VS Code, you're working in your editors, you're doing code-first development, or any sort of low-code or pro-code, low-code scenarios. Using the DX MCP server gives you a lot of tooling to work with that. The Salesforce hosted MCP server provides access to Salesforce org so that you can agentically drive through and provide access to any sorts of chat agents that your users might be using. They want to talk to Salesforce, and get objects out, retrieve data, perform actions within the org. Those are our major use cases. We'll do the demo. I have DXMCP wired into my Cursor IDE. I've got my project here. I'm a little bit worried about security bugs, so I'm going to ask the server to find all the security bugs in my code. It's going to run through, do that analysis. It's going to run security analysis tools. It's going to look at the code. It's going to find and verify where it sees bugs. And then I'm a little bit lazy. I'm going to say, okay, you found a SOCL injection. Go ahead and fix it. It's going to think for a bit. It's going to present to me back. Here's the fix for it. I'm going to take where you're hard coding in that string concatenating, replace it with bind variables, and it will fix the code for me. Again, this is just a small demo. There are a number of controls. Some of the things that it found, I know it went by real quick. If you want to see what it did find, this is something you can wire in today and take for a drive. As I said, this is getting access to your code base, to your objects in Salesforce, to a lot of different things. So we've provided a number of security features for it. This does talk directly to Salesforce server via native libraries. So we're not passing a lot of things around. It's very clearly built to minimize and mitigate secret passing. So you can have confidence that if there are potential malicious servers installed in your client that are trying to exfiltrate your secrets, you're protected in some ways from that. Our code is very much designed to take that into account and not pass secrets around across server boundaries. And then, of course, making sure that you are opted in, and this will only operate on servers that you give it permission to. So if you've got a development org, you've got a couple scratch orgs, you've got a sandbox, and you've got production, and you want to make sure this never touches production, you tell it will hard configure to never talk to production, so you don't have to worry about making inadvertent changes to those systems. On the other side, coming into this, if your users want to start chatting and asking things to the Salesforce org, to your objects, to all the data that you have in there, you can use the Salesforce hosted MCP. I wired it in the Claude. There is a task in there to do an account review briefing. So this is a predefined task. It'll just go out. It will query the data. I say I want to run it. It says, okay, I don't know what customer I want to run it for, so I ask it to tell me the customers. I don't run this in YOLO mode, so it's going to ask me to make sure of what I'm doing. It'll run those queries, give me the list of customers within my org. I'm going to pick my sample one, JoSoft. It's going to go off and run a whole bunch of queries against all the data in my Salesforce org, putting together a summary package for the executive or the salesperson who wants to know what they can target. It's also going to go out and do external research. It's going to look at Google. It's going to do a number of web searches trying to find all the data. And then it gives me a nice summary of that account. Of course, for this one, it's very much a demo account, so it didn't give you anything useful. But it did say, this does not look like a real customer. This is not someone that's serious business. Don't waste a lot of resources reaching out to them because JoSoft doesn't exist. There are a lot of security features. Again, all access to this is through external client apps. It has to be a human user authenticating to it. This is not for machine to machine. This is for human interaction. So we enforce that by making sure that there is a human in the loop. And that also means that all of the activities that this is performing within your org are done with that human identity. So you've got CRUD enforcement, you've got field level enforcement, you've got sharing, you've got an audit trail. If a record is changed, the user that authenticated to it is the one that changed that record. You preserve your audit logs. All the privileges are preserved within the scope of your Salesforce org. There are a number of servers that are exposed with multiple capabilities. There's read-only, and there's elevation levels from there. So if you only want to make sure that regardless of what someone's permissions in your org are, that their MCP access is read-only, you only configure them to the read-only version of the service, and that way, even if the tooling tries to make update calls, and even if they have permissions in the org to make those changes, the MCP server will not allow them to because they are in read-only mode. You can also build custom tools. Again, you saw the lead generation one. You can run named queries, invocable actions, whatever you want. If you're building shortcuts for your users to use, they'll have it. This does come with caveat, though. I'll give you a second to read my lovely warning. All the permissions that are enforced in your org are there and are present up until the point where the data leaves the Salesforce boundary. It's going back to a client. That client is not under our control, that is under your control. It is, Claude on a desktop, it's an OpenAI chatbot, it's whatever interface is driving those MCP servers. So be aware, this is very much a channel for data exfiltration. There are definite risks that come with MCP servers, so it is a trade-off between convenience and risk. And once that data is outside of our boundary, we don't have any enforcement mechanisms on it. It's up to you to properly secure your clients, make sure that they have the correct DLP protections or whatever else you want to have on them to preserve that. Quickly talk about D360 and data governance. If you've done anything with Data Cloud D360, you may know some of this. For those of us that are coming to this from a more traditional Salesforce core side, there's a few things that in the permissions model that are a little bit weird. We're used to, we've got profiles, we've got perm sets, we've got permissions on objects and everything else. With D360, it's kind of the inverse of that. The elements themselves carry their security data with them. So the way you define security in D360 is you have metadata and resources that defines, these are the objects, this is what they are, this is the fields that they have, this is the information that it carries. And there's a policy definition and policy enforcement to provide that. Here's what can be done with this. Here's what the fields are. Here's, this is a customer object. It's got a sensitive value in it of, the customer's tax number or whatnot. Two different types of access control in D360, role-based access control, attribute-based access control. Both of these, again, it's a little weird. It's not imposed on it from outside. It's native to the element itself. It's carried along with that element. The element can say, I will allow sales users to access me. So that role is sales users, and they're allowed to access those objects. Again, we're not imposing it from outside. And then the attribute-based access controls, you can flag, this is a sensitive field on this element or on this object. We're not going to allow anyone to view it except for administrators or accounting teams or whatever. And all this is significant because Agentforce is going to be accessing this data. Agents are very good at processing data, at understanding things, and we're going to want to give them access to data, but we want to make sure they have the appropriate levels of access and that we build our data access controls in a relevant way for humans and non-humans to interact with. Finally, there is dynamic data masking to make sure that if you do need to expose data, the data exists while hiding the actual values of that data. It is provided as a tool on the platform, and your relationships are all maintained, but it makes it so, yes, there is data there, but if the user doesn't have the right privileges, they're not going to see the real value. Finally, on the compliance side, we do demonstrate our security out in public every day. If you're building on us and you need to provide guarantees to your customers or your users, the compliance portal is a great place to start. The Agentforce external security assessment was just completed a little bit ago, where we are having external security companies come in, perform penetration testing of our services and products, and providing those results. And again, we have all of these standards that we meet so that we are providing that to you so that you, in turn, if you have particular compliance requirements for your customers, you by definition get those by using Salesforce. Shree's going to talk about observability.
Thank you, Joe. So kind of ending towards the end of the talk, we want to wrap it up with observability and deterministic execution, obviously. So when it comes to observability, I want to start off with Agentforce Studio. You might have known it as Interaction Explorer. This does exactly what the subtitle says. It opens up your agent, looks into that black box. Every single action, the topic invocation, the topic classification, the action sequence, the LLM interaction, all of that is now logged and available for you. It's not just logged, you're able to go in and dig into each and every one of them. You're able to see what happened, at what turn, what was going on. And not only is that, if there is a guardrail that was fired, let's say there was a prompt injection detection alert that was fired, or a toxicity alert that was fired, you can see it right there saying what happened, what was fired, what happened in that specific area. In addition to that, to make it much more easier, what we're doing is that we allow you to go ahead and use features of Data Cloud, that is by segment this data by intent, sentiment, and tags. So what that allows you to do is that you can now start to understand patterns within certain segments of your users or certain problem types, and you can start addressing them before they actually become major problems. If this is where you see, this is where you log everything. This is the brains behind the Agentforce Studio. Every single interaction that we spoke about is actually captured and stored in the session tracing data model in your Data 360. Again, what that means is that you can take this data out, you can interact with it, you can analyze it, you can correlate with other interactions, other systems, and you can get a much more deeper view of it. Better yet, if you just want to debug it, you can just get into the Agentforce Command Center, and that allows you to go ahead and debug these logs. And anytime, as I mentioned, anytime there's a guardrail hit, anytime there's a policy violation, you can go back 3 turns to see, like, hey, what happened that led to this particular scenario. Next up, I want to quickly talk about Shield event monitoring. Most of you here already know what Shield is. It's all the great things that you get with platform. What we did was we extended it. We took the same observability from our platform and looked into all of our agents and said, where do we put all the observability from our agents? Why not we push it into Shield? Now Shield has all that information, who, when, where, how, all that information pertaining to agents are now available in Shield. What this makes it is that it is all structured and it's queryable. You can start playing with it. And just like how you can access your Shield logs through a log browser or through APIs and connect it to your SIEM, you can do exactly the same thing here as well. And finally, you can also set up transaction security policy alerts. That is a big, big plus when it comes to this. Finally, Sri, you spoke about a lot of these things. That's a lot of logs, a lot of information. How do I make it sane? Am I going to get a lot of noise? Think about it, right? Wouldn't it be great if we can get security agents, 24/7, hundreds of security agents working just for your org? Wouldn't that be great? That's exactly what we did with Security Center with Agentforce. We have agents that are constantly looking at this data, triaging it, correlating it, and coming up with a hit list of things that a human should look at. So Monday morning when your analyst comes in, they're not starting their day by going in and reviewing all the alerts. They have a pick list of, say, here are the top 5 alerts, I've already triaged them, this is why I think it's important, and this is what I think you should do. And that's exactly what Security Center with Agentforce does for you. It gives you that whole unified security posture across everything. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Joe to bring us home with deterministic execution.
So if you were with us at Dreamforce, we talked a lot about needing to make sure that your agents are doing what they're supposed to do. So if you have any sort of business process that has prerequisites to it, that certain actions be taken at certain times, that documents need to be filled out, We know it's a little bit difficult to get Agentforce to always follow the track of things and to always make sure that things are done in sequence, that things like user authentication are performed, and any sort of deterministic capabilities are a little bit of a challenge to get done in that very LLM-driven world. You can shell out to flows, Apex, run named queries. Again, the execution engine generally puts things in the right order, but if you need to do something that has specific requirements up until now, one thing you need to do is go out into Apex and do it programmatically that way. With the introduction of AgentScript, this is giving you a new model that brings together the power of non-deterministic intent parsing, discerning, talking with users, understanding what they're going after, plus that deterministic level of execution that you want. There's a great quote here from the help documents at what it does and what it's intended to do. And we'll walk through a quick demo after we talk about building blocks. So there are a number of parts to this. Reasoning and deterministic, that hybrid. We have certain things that we need to do. That's driven by the deterministic logic instructions. There are security risks to all of these that I'm calling out on here, as well as best practices to help mitigate those risks. Again, reasoning is what you're used to with Agentforce, using that planner service to understand what's happening, determine what next actions to take, and execute them. You still have those LLM-based threats and those best practices for mitigating those. Reducing your privileges, validating your input, using good grounding data. On the deterministic side, again, when you're doing something that has specific steps, needs specific actions to be taken, you still want to follow that least privilege. Understand if you do have to elevate privileges, if you're calling flows, if you're calling Apex in system mode, making sure that those are appropriately segmented out so that they're not generally accessible. Within AgentScript, we have variables. These are not in your context window. This is outside. This is reliable storage, shared state, passing across your execution modes. And this is a potential vector for attack. If your user is inputting something and you're taking it and sticking it into a variable, you need to be aware that you're getting that untrusted data, and it could contain a hostile payload. So verify your inputs always. Be paranoid. That's a best practice. And then, of course, it wouldn't be deterministic without conditions. We need the ability to make decisions, to drive things down different paths. This is one place where I've seen potential security vulnerabilities. I always recommend that you fail closed. If you're making a security decision, the default should be deny access, do not take the action. Got a real quick demo here. That'll take about a minute to walk through. If you were here at TDX and you saw our demo, I have a highly privileged action here, the movie information topic. It's got an action in it that'll update our movie runtime. Of course, my attacker figured that out. They're using the public chat interface to go in and make updates to my data because the agent, of course, has access to it. And they're using that privilege flow to update core data that they shouldn't have access to. I'm going to switch this to AgentScript. I'm going to set up a variable. If it's an admin, default is false. I require strong authentication for internal users. Starting off the agent, here's the reasoning, what it's going to do, the steps in it. The movie information topic, again, this is just a code view of what's in the user interface. The reasoning there, I've got that condition. If that is an admin user, we'll go ahead and let them allow that to run that set runtime. Otherwise, we're not going to do it at all. So we can guarantee that the only time that set runtime action is going to be run is if the user has authenticated and they're an internal admin. We're preserving the functionality of our agent to react to what the users are asking it, but maintaining strong security context. With that,
we're done. Thank you all. We'll be hanging out here for a while if you have any questions. If not, if you showed up a little late, this session's again coming in the afternoon.
Oh, quick plug. If you haven't yet and you want to learn more or show off what you know about Salesforce security, Down in the trust zone is the security challenge. It's hands-on security training game. Come and join us. It's a capture the flag style. We set you up with a trial org and give you a set of hands-on security challenges to solve. You also can win a keychain if you solve 10 of the right challenges. There's swag.